Professor, thank you so much. I give you the time warning with a very, very heavy heart. And I also wanted to show how what Professor Bowman-Thomas has done is really give a statistical overview of what's been happening in the region, and I think to focus on a lot of the core issues. And again, to show really when you just focus on, for example, the FTAs, I think you miss a lot of the bigger picture. Ramesh?
Thank you, Sasha. Ministers, Executive Director of Caribbean Export, DG of CARIFORUM, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ramesh Ramdeen, so if you look on the agenda and you're seeing Patrick Antoine, you know something changed. So I'm replacing Patrick Antoine. This says two things. One, I was only asked yesterday evening actually, by the Executive Director and David, that if I could fill in for Patrick today. So it means that my presentation wouldn't have all the quantitative analysis and the nice graphs that are presented by the other presenters. And secondly, I was asked to probably bring a dimension to the discussion that is new and different to what the other presenters would have had. And that was a bit of a task, given the limited time frame I had. So here I was last night thinking about what I could tell this distinguished gathering, speaking after speakers such as Sir Shidat Ramphal and the Minister and Sheldon Tecum and others, what I could bring to the table that is dynamic, that is new. I'm presenting just before lunch, so I need to hold your attention. And I think, okay, let me give some practical experience of what is happening from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective. Also, Sasha alluded to the fact that we engage in significant territories in terms of accessing market. And I thought to myself, maybe the theme of my presentation should be, is market access really and truly access the market? So with that short introduction, let me start on my presentation. The region theoretically always had market access. Going back to the days of Lomé 1, Lomé 2, Lomé 3, Lomé 4, the Cotonou, CBI, Caribbean, these were markets that were always available to the exporters of the region. This preferential arrangement speaks to the fact that market access is available to producers, manufacturers, and exporters from CARICOM and CARIFORUM states. The question is, why trade from this part of the world has not flourished under these arrangements? This is the question I would seek to answer as I proceed with my presentation. Today, preferential arrangements are coming to an end, and reciprocity is the name of the game. You open your market to mine, and I will open my market to you. One can postulate many arguments why this is materializing. Firstly, because of the dictates at the multilateral level. For example, developments of the WTO, which speaks to successful rounds of negotiation, with market openings and tariff liberalization being key among the issues discussed. Secondly, preferential arrangements are coming to an end because of the proliferation of free trade agreements countries are asked to engage. CARICOM has a plethora of such agreements, namely the Economic Partnership Agreement, CARICOM Costa Rica, CARICOM DR, and presently the region is engaging Canada in a free trade agreement that should be concluded by the end of this year. Thirdly, because of the bilateral arrangements that are in place, this also leads to reciprocal market openings. CARICOM has bilateral arrangements with Venezuela, Colombia, and Cuba. Even Trinidad and Tobago has bilateral arrangements with countries, namely Guatemala, Panama, and presently we are having discussions with El Salvador and Honduras. Guyana has an arrangement with Brazil, and so too St. Kitts. Belize has an arrangement with Guatemala. Thus, really and truly, who are we trading on an MFN basis with? That is a real question. Another reason for the opening up of regional market is because of the dictates of the multilateral lending agencies and the conditionalities associated with seeking assistance from these agencies. We know Jamaica, Trinidad, most of us in the region had cause to go to the IMF. In most instances, Some of these conditionalities speaks to the opening of domestic market and liberalization, which in theory would allow for competition into your marketplace, leading to increased efficiencies, greater choice to the consumer, better quality products and services, and generally increased standard of living for all. Is the practical reality dovetailing with the theoretical construct? Another important question you need to ask yourself. With this new dispensation of free trade regime, which morphed from past preferential arrangements that theoretically allowed for market access, are exporters more inclined to engage and access markets under a reciprocal trading arrangement? Again, another important question. The negotiators, the politicians, the BSOs, the CARICOM Secretariat, the CRNM, the OTN, they all negotiated reciprocal market access for the region and assumed that there is a new pot of gold for manufacturers to exploit. The question is, nothing is really being done to address the supply side constraint. The DG of the CARIFORUM spoke about this morning, addressing the supply side constraint as one of the main reasons why the trade is not materializing the way it's supposed to. Many argue that manufacturers are not taking advantages of the opportunities that are created for them. Well, what are the opportunities? Market access? They always had that. One can argue that under a reciprocal framework, the rules were adjusted to make it more palatable for them to enter the market. This is a fact. There have been some softening of the rules. For example, under the EPA, flour-based products can now enter the EU market easier relative to the preferential scheme of Cotonou. I was involved in that process. Carlos was very much involved in that process, and we got the rule changed to facilitate our manufacturers who ship flour-based products like cake and pastries into the European Union. For those who don't know, under the Cotonou arrangement, we had to source flour that was produced in the region or source flour that was from the European Union to make, source wheat to make the flour that would make the flour-based product under that regime. Under a free trade agreement where you are informed and you are part of the process, you could shape the rule into your own likeness. So we were able to get them to change the rule that would allow us to source wheat from the United States, where most of our wheat come from, to make our flour-based product. This is a step in the right direction. However, this in itself is not enough to address the supply-side constraints some of our countries in the region face. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, there are many regulatory and institutional issues that needs to be addressed to increase trade facilitation. Issues pertaining to Chemistry, Food and Drug Agency in Trinidad and Tobago, for example. For those who are familiar with the Chemistry, Food and Drug Agency in Trinidad, when you engage this agency, it's like you engage in an agency and you're doing business in the 1970s. It's that bad. Other agencies such as the Custom, Port Facility, Bureau of Standards, they all need to beef up their trade facilitation mechanisms. There have been some increases in efficiency in Trinidad and Tobago in their operations. However, more needs to be done. I am told that development assistance that was negotiated under the Economic Partnership Agreement should be geared to address these very shortcomings. The reality of the situation is that most of the countries of CARICOM have not ratified the EPA at this point in time. So the benefits of the development assistance and all the flexibilities and advantages the region should have had from the agreement is not redounding to the manufacturers. The frightening thing is, and I think one of the speakers alluded to that, is that right next door with the Central Americans, they are presently or may have concluded their discussion and engagement with the European Union. So the advantages that we think we had will soon be eroded if it has not been eroded already. I don't want you to think that nothing is being done to help these trade facilitation institutions across the region. There are improvements taking place and assistance coming from governments is materializing. All the same, these institutions are not close to where they need to be to allow for the ease of doing business, both in terms of imports and exports. It still takes up to 7 days in a good month to clear containers in Trinidad and Tobago. When you compare this to Singapore, and I'm sure it might be worse in some countries actually. When you compare this to Singapore, where one can clear a container in 37 minutes, you realize how far we need to go. No amount of market access would allow manufacturers to increase their trade without first addressing trade facilitation issues and supply-side constraints. I'm not even going to talk about financing issues. I'm not even going to talk about shipment. We all know the rigors of this. This morning, the Director General talked about trying to get P.J. Patterson, former Minister P.J. Patterson, to this colloquium, and we understand why he's not here. Another major issue why manufacturers are not increasing their trade, although market access has been assured via the trade negotiation, is because free trade does not always translate to mean free to trade. There are many examples I can bring from my country to show where manufacturers try to enter these newly negotiated markets with enhanced terms of trade and rules of origin criteria, only to find out that these markets want to keep your goods out. Only to find out that these markets will keep their goods out if they really want to. Okay, I just got a note here from Sasha that says KILL. So I think he's telling me that I'm killing, I'm doing really well. You know? But he also has turn over the paper, and when I turn over the paper, it says, keep it limited, lunatic. So, Sasha's really... So you are told that there are no duties at the border, but the issue is, although there are no duties at the border, you are faced with non-tariff barriers, many non-tariff barriers. I have companies in Trinidad and Tobago, Sasha Cosmetics, TCL, trying to get into the dorms, for example, and they're faced with significant problem in terms of registering their product into the dorms. I have Casey Confectionery trying to get into the Costa Rican market. Market access is there, but they're trying to get into the market and they are told they have to register every single product they try to trade into Costa Rica, and they have to use a lawyer from Costa Rica to engage the process. So KC is selling 20 different sweets in 5 packaging size. 20 by 5 is $100,000 US dollars just to get your product into the Costa Rican market. So it's not always market access. And even in instances when you trade in above the board, and I'm living here and I'm not really going through my presentation anymore, even in instances where you trade in above the board, you recognize that if these countries really want to stop your product, they find innovative ways. United States, for example, they have instituted anti-dumping measures against steel products coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. We know we were not dumping. We know we were not subsidizing the product, but it made no sense taking this matter all the way to the WTO that would run you up to $3 million. That is a significant cash flow problem for manufacturers. The alternative is that they decided they just wouldn't export the product into the United States. But even if you take the matter all the way to the WTO and you win the case, as Ambassador Murdoch would tell you from Antigua and Barbuda, there's no guarantee that you're going to get any remedy. 10 years Antigua Barbuda is trying to fight a case with the United States, and these are things that we really need to look at. However, before I leave this very valid point of world trade and asymmetrical relationship, I want to point out one other thing that deters trade from materializing the way it's supposed to. At the multilateral level, they are speaking about the successful rounds of negotiation and the Doha rounds that we still say is stalled, but it probably has died. We're talking about liberalization and removal of tariffs, and they want the developing world to remove our tariffs, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But for us, they need to remove their subsidies on the agricultural-based good. The Farm Bill, the Common Agricultural Policy of the European Union, these things are what are deterring trade. We have comparative advantages in what? Producing basically agricultural-type products. But we cannot sell it to them because their agricultural products are heavily subsidized. So the farmers in Africa, a number of developing countries that export agricultural product. Mind you, I am not saying that is totally a bad thing because I also agree with what I said this morning in terms of value added. We need to stop selling our cotton and oil and buying back cotton, Sea Island cotton shirt for $500 US. We need to stop selling our cocoa at $3 per kilogram and buying back chocolate at $100 per kilogram. So we really need to engage the process in a meaningful way. Sasha, I know I'm killing, but I'm trying to bring it to an end here. You know? A hungry man is an angry man. Right. So I'm not here to tell you that reciprocal trade is bad. I think reciprocal trade is the way we need to go about engaging all the arrangements in the future. Globalization is a fast-moving trade. The question is, are we too small to shape the process? I don't think so. It is a fast-moving train that has started and is a journey on its way. We need to sit down in this train, strap on our seatbelt, and go along for the ride. But there's no reason why we can't tap the conductor on his shoulder and say, listen, this thing is going too fast. The road is too bumpy. Slow down a bit. I think we have that capability. I don't think we understand how much strength and advantages we have in ourselves. This economic space that we call the Caribbean, CARICOM region, we have produced the likes of Dwight York, Brian Lara, Miss Universe, you name it, Karani James, Usain Bolt. We have produced significant skill sets. We have produced Shaggy, Bob Marley, Marshall Montano. We have been able to produce significant people with significant capabilities. And that does not speak to the services sector as well. We have some successes in the goods sector as well. We have the Grace Kennedys, we have the SM Jalil, the Sasha Cosmetics. We do have champions, the Barons. So we need to embrace this process, see what we could get out of it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen,